Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for attending today's session. Things to know when buying or selling a home. I'm Jeff King from 12 Points Wealth Management. I'm a financial advisor, wealth planner for the last 20 years. I'd like to introduce you to Jeff Rolk. So Jeff is a part of Commonwealth Mortgage. Sorry, did I say that wrong?
We're Gold Coast Mortgage.
Gold Coast Mortgage, excuse me. Jeff, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I'm a lifelong resident of Massachusetts, father of two. I've lived up in the North Shore for 20 years now and joined Gold Coast in 2015. So we're a small independent broker, and we are just designed around helping our clients achieve goals through some sort of financing, right? We help people live where they want to live, or possibly, work with their business. Anything involving financing a property, we're able to help them with. And we're a 4-person company, and we're licensed in Massachusetts, Maine, and New Hampshire.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. So we'll let you kick it off and help educate us.
Sure. So first slide is just kind of a very general rule of thumb when you're purchasing a property. So the rule of 28 and 32 refer to what's called your debt to income ratio. And that's just how much of your money that's coming in from work are you spending on your mortgage and your other debts. So for round numbers, if you made $10,000 a month, $120,000 a year, you could have a 50% debt to income ratio. So you could spend $5,000 on a mortgage payment. That's of your gross income, so pre-tax. So most people, that's not the most appealing thing. So the rule of 28 and 32 are a ratio that's a little bit easier on your lifestyle. You don't want to be what's called house poor. So the 28 is your housing ratio. So if your mortgage payment doesn't exceed 28% of your gross income, generally you'll be able to comfortably make that payment and not have huge adjustments to your lifestyle. And then 32 would be your total debt to income ratio. So that would be credit card payments, car payments, in addition to your mortgage. If you can keep that in the low 30s, again, you'll be able to have your savings goals, vacation, other things won't be stepped on when your monthly paycheck comes in, how much is going to be sent out. So that's just a, kind of a good indicator of where you are. If your debt to income ratio is up at a 40, you might want to consider saving more for a down payment, or, reorganizing your goals for how much loan you're going to take on. Next up is, caring for your credit. This is an easy one, and it's easy to forget as well, unfortunately. So your credit is a living, breathing thing. It's calculated hundreds of times a day, depending on your usage. So as soon as you spend some money at the grocery store, the credit bureaus are aware of that. And goals for that are just to keep your credit under 30% utilized. So again, for round numbers, if your credit card has a $10,000 limit, you don't want to put more than $3,000 on that if you're about to go and apply for any type of financing. Any type of overutilization, once it goes above 50% utilized, your score starts to get stepped on very quickly. And that can really hurt you when, the day that you fill out the application, it's a snapshot of exactly what's going on that day and that time. So yesterday doesn't matter, and tomorrow they can't look at yet. So they just look at exactly what's happening. So taking credit cards down to 0 before you apply for anything is really good for a billing cycle. And then you'll have, the highest scores available. Keeping it under 30%, and then if your regular use doesn't exceed that, you really have nothing to worry about. You're taking care of your credit, and that'll take care of you. So things to remember on credit are everything's fixable except for late payments. Late payments show on your report for 7 years, and there's a 30-day, there's a 60-day, and there's a 90-day late. And as soon as you get into that 90-day category, your score is retracted for a while, and the only way to build it back up is more good data. So, late payments happen, whether it's financial issue or maybe something got forgot, or maybe somebody put a debt on your credit that you weren't even aware of. So having several lines of credit, a couple of credit cards, if you have a car payment, if you're financing something, if you have a mortgage, that will dilute that single, pain point, that single late payment. But if you only have one credit card to your name and you've never financed anything else and you have a late payment on it, the only data they have is a little bit negative. So, like I said, your credit's a living thing, and you can manage it and take care of it. And it's just a good thing to keep yourself aware of. If you Google like free credit report, there's a government website. You'll get your own credit report for free once a year. I recommend that over like the Credit Karmas or any of the paid apps, because I feel like they're designed to just keep you engaged and make you scared. So every time you put something on your credit card, you get a text that says your score changed, and that's not necessarily accurate from my perspective. So, just knowing once a year, are your scores staying relatively the same, and finding out why is a really healthy activity for you.
And that's freecredit.com. So that's...
Yeah, if you just Google like my free credit report, there's a .gov website, and that will guide you to how to go and like secure the credit report. It takes about 5 minutes. I did it a few months ago just out of curiosity. And yeah, it's just, you go to make sure it's the .gov website, because there are a lot of companies trying to sell you their credit report when you can get it for free. And then they'll guide you to, one of the credit bureaus that will then give you your report free of charge.
So can you talk a little bit about if you have many credit cards open and you decide you want to kind of clean it up, if you close it, if that's a bad idea or a good idea?
If it's got a good payment history, just leave it open as long as you can. Throw it in a drawer and don't use it, because if you've had a credit card for 15 years and it's got a perfect payment history and you're just not using it, that perfect history sits on your credit report and updates every month. And then you have available debt that you're not using. So that's also like a good credit habit. If you close them all, now you have no available credit and all the history is gone. So now there's not as much data to build off of. Again, if you've got the late payments and stuff, closing it doesn't make that go away. It'll sit under the derogatory category until it's worked its way through the system. And so, good credit habits and just leaving things open is great for your report. And you can also add somebody as a authorized user. This is a hack we use occasionally if someone doesn't have much data. My kids are authorized users on a credit card that's 15 years older than they are. Someday when they go to apply for something, that credit history will be on their credit. They don't have access to the card, they don't have one, but their social security numbers are tied to it. And the double-edged sword there is everything I put on that credit card goes on their credit. So they'll have a payment if I don't zero that card out when they go to apply for something someday. So, we just need to be conscious of that until they build their own credit. But in the interim, it's a quick way to add positive data to somebody's credit report, basically for no cost and, no real risk.
Smart.
Right, homeowners expenses. These are planning stage things that you need to prep yourself for when you're buying a house or upgrading or downsizing. But one of my home inspectors usually says I jump to maintenance automatically, but he said you're looking at about 3% of the value of the house every year is going to go back into it on average. So if you live in a condo, that's probably a lot of condo fee is going to cover that. But then you're going to have your other expenses. You're going to have to fix things and buy appliances or paint. And so some years it's going to be less than 3%. Some years it's going to be more, but that's probably your average. Insurance, same thing. Homeowners insurance is going up. Nothing's getting cheaper these days. So insurance carriers are raising their costs, and it's kind of unavoidable. So just be willing to shop it, try to find an agency that's got a good reputation and, read everybody's reviews online and, make sure you get yourself a few quotes or have somebody refer you so that you are, confident in what you're getting. Similar with utilities, you're going to just have to, these are expenses beyond your mortgage when you own a property. So you'll have to pay your electricity, your gas, water, any other, local utilities that'll have to be paid. You just want to have an estimate of what it's going to be a month. And so you're prepared for the total amount of payments you're going to make annually. And then taxes are a huge component of real estate. That is included in your mortgage payment. If you're in a single family house, most likely your insurance is as well. But an exercise I often ask clients to do when they're in the pre-approval stage is, let's suppose there's 3 towns they're looking at and they want to buy for $700,000. We'll make out a payment for the principal and interest on that purchase. We usually just estimate the insurance at $100 a month. And then I'll give them that payment with a blank line that says taxes. And their job is to look at all 3 of those towns at recent sales for $700,000 and then take that tax bill and divide it by 12 and add it into that payment. And the exact same house can be a few $100s more or less a month just by changing towns. And that helps them sort of flush out what's their goal for that town. So higher taxes tends to mean good school systems. And so if somebody is going to buy a house that they're going to have their family in, like, that might not be the worst thing. Where if a couple is downsizing in retirement, a good school system really doesn't have much value to them. And they may want to look in a town that has lower taxes, just for the simple fact that they're on the other side of that need. But yeah, the tax bill every month can flush out pretty substantial costs one way or the other for the exact same house.
Yep.
Or a comparable house, not the same one. But. All right. Mortgage terms, generally a mortgage is a 30-year product, but on average, a mortgage is refinanced, paid off, the house is sold. A mortgage lasts on average 7 years. So some people live in a house for a year, maybe their job changes, maybe there's a 3rd kid, but it drives them out of the house into their next one. And some people stay for the rest of their life. But the average mortgage lives for 7 years. So, when there's costs, when there's anything, we want to weigh it of how long are you likely to keep this mortgage, and then what's the cost of sort of planning for going out beyond that. And that's a bit of a unique conversation to every single purchase, but that's why that number is important. Your down payment is a big component of how much your loan amount's going to be and how much your buying power, like what it gets you. So to get into a conventional loan is going to have a down payment minimum of 3% now. It used to be 5%, but you can get into a conventional loan with 3% and you'll pay mortgage insurance, private mortgage insurance, called PMI. And that is, in the recent years, been repriced a little bit more favorably. So if you have good credit and you're in a conventional loan, the mortgage insurance isn't really that painful to pay, and it allows you to put less down. Once you get to a 20% down payment, you no longer have to pay mortgage insurance, and that's just like actuarial, insurance. Once you're at 20%, you're less likely to default, and then they don't require the insurance anymore. Fixed versus variable loan. This is a big one, especially in today's environment with rates being higher. There's a lot of lenders out there pushing the variable loans, and there was when rates were lower, because there's a fixed term on a variable loan. So if you have a 30-year loan, they say for the first 5 years your payment can't change, and then depending on what rates are doing, we'll adjust it after that. And what's never disclosed is just how much they'll adjust it and just how it works. So I'm kind of fundamentally opposed to adjustable rate mortgages, especially on the home that you're going to live in. So I like that. I've successfully talked a lot of people out of it. They're dangling a slightly better rate in front of you, so the payment is a little bit lower and the number is a bit more appealing. But if rates are 7 and you can get 6.5 on an adjustable rate, they have to pre-qualify you at 12.5%, because, or excuse me, 11.5%, because there's generally a 5% adjustment is available. And that can be on payment 61. So your rate can go from 6.5 to 11.5 in one payment. And depending on the size of your loan, that can enormously affect your lifestyle. And, you know, a lot of people say you can always refinance, but there's hundreds of reasons that you can't. And, you know, nothing ever comes at the right time. So in my mind, a fixed rate is worth the cost 10 out of 10 times, just for the certainty. You know, if rates go up, you're going to sleep great. And if rates go down, it's my job to call you and say there's an opportunity to save. So that's my quick take on that. And then points. A lot of people have heard the term, but don't necessarily know what points are. So a point is 1% of your loan amount is 1 point. So an $800,000 loan, a point is $8,000. And then it goes up and down proportionately. So the easiest way to look at it is if the rate today is 7 and you say, well, I'd like 6.75. The lender will offer that you can pay points, which is basically you're forward paying a fee to get that lower rate. And then you need to calculate out on a monthly payment, what's the difference between 7% and 6.75, which again will proportionately change with your loan amount. And how many months is it going to take you to make up that point? If it's only one, it might be a half, it might be a point and a half. There are lenders out there that advertise online and, you know, like through my headphones when I'm working out, that for 2 points we'll give you this rate. And so you're talking an enormous fee depending on your loan size for something that's going to take 5 years or a decade to become a positive thing for you. So paying points can be problematic, or, you know, it can be appealing if you look deep. A lot of lenders, if you're looking at an online advertisement, their rate is including a point or 1 1/4 points or something like that. You might have to dig around to find it, but it's becoming more and more common. So a good thing to bury in your notes is just you want to ask for the no points rate anytime that you're getting a quote. And, you know, I'm not paying any additional fees to get this rate, am I? And the lender really should give you exactly what you asked for, but then, you know, just have a quality controlled by somebody who looks at these things a lot, which is something I've done in the past for people. But, you know, in my mind, it's rarely worth paying more than a fractional point. So if you can get a slightly lower rate for a few $100, then you say, you know, in 3 or 6 months, this goes positive, like absolutely. But if you're talking 36, 48 months out, you're running into that, like statistically, like how much am I going to end up saving if in 7 years I don't have this loan anymore?
Right. So I guess it's also indicative if someone's reaching for points, a lot of it might be the pressure that they feel like they're just on the edge of taking out maybe too much against their base. So if that's part of their argument, that certainly should be discouraged. I'm sure that's something you actively discourage.
Yeah. So it's just the raw math usually lets people decide not to do it. So if you got to make up $5,000 at $40 a month, right? How many months does that take? And they go, oh, wow. So, and then at that point, you haven't saved a penny. You just got your money back. So if next year, when you've spent that $5,000, you move, your job changes and you're going to change states, that money never comes back. Where if it was, say, $5,000 or $10,000 and you just diverted that to down payment instead, you've just changed where that money is on your own balance sheet. It's equity in the house now. And if you do need to sell the house, theoretically, you'll get every penny back because the house was sold and now you had a smaller loan. So more cash goes to you as the owner. And it's favorable. And, you know, everything has to go perfect for that, for paying points and for the variable rates to work out, where if things go wrong in the fixed rate and you paid no points, you really can weather it much more easily because you know it's done, you know it's set in stone, and you know it can't change.
Gotcha.
Right, so just a couple of tools and resources that we found. A mortgage calculator, you know, that's sort of what I help people set up for themselves, is like a toolkit to when they look at a house on Zillow before they go see it is here's how you at least roughly estimate your payment. So we know their price range, and maybe it's like a high and a low price range. So we'll give them a payment for the high and the low. And then we know the rough insurance estimation, and then they figure out the taxes. And then before they go look at the house, they can say, okay, for about this much a month, we could live here. And then you can walk in the door and really get a feeling of how am I going to do in this property, instead of falling in love with it and finding out maybe you don't want to make that payment. So this is a little bit of a, it's a great tool to have. Lenders, brokers, have your team in place before you go out and see houses. So it pains me a bit when somebody calls and they have an accepted offer already. So no planning was done. Maybe there's some expectation setting that needed to happen. And, it's too late to do that. Where if you know who your attorney is going to be and they review your offer letter or they help with the purchase and sale immediately because you already know that they're there, that's going to be the best thing for you. And it's the same with the mortgage person. Like if the letter is in place and you're ready and you know what your payment's going to be, you're going to more confidently make offers. And that's just, it's a good practice. Property insurance, the insurance agent's going to take care of you. The only type of special conditions are flood zones. If you need flood insurance, and that's an easy Google search on a FEMA flood map. You just search the town and punch in the address and you can see it. If the property is like extremely unique for a pool or some outdoor space or an auxiliary building, occasionally it can be tricky, but most cases, that should get caught in the filter way ahead of time. Mm-hmm. So, if you're looking for a unique property, you already are. So you're probably planning for that. So there's really nothing that they've never seen before. Coastal properties, flood zones, nothing's getting cheaper to own. So just be prepared for that. If you're looking for a coastal home, there's, rising sea levels and storms and stuff. So we're seeing it. I live right on the coast in Massachusetts, so seeing it unfold live.
Right. So that's something people really have to be wary of, depending on where you live. Massachusetts is one story, but if you're in Florida or California, it's really getting kind of hairy. There's places that are uninsurable now.
Yeah, absolutely. And, insurance carriers are inspecting houses more thoroughly. And obviously, as the value grows, their concern grows. So, just be prepared for that. And you got to stay on top of your home maintenance. Because that's part of the deal that you make with them is your upkeep will keep the house weather tight and stuff like that. So just be aware and, like I said, have the team around you so that your expectations are set before you write your deposit check and, get your heart set on something. So
if you have a financial advisor, talk to them. It's part of your planning, because just like you, Jeff, we don't like getting surprised. Oh yeah, we just bought a house. Let's make sure it fits into your plan. And we'll certainly then steer you to someone like Jeff for these types of decisions.
Precisely. So, it's the job of everybody to defend the client and their interest in all this stuff. So good to have all the puzzle pieces turned face up, and then you get to make your plan. Because, if we don't know how much flood insurance is or if it's necessary, like part of the plan is, in a cloak and you don't know what it is. So we can't have that.
Right.
All right, similar to the last slide, right? Working with a realtor. Realtors commissions is a little foggy right now. So the NAR settlement went live at the start of the month, and we're just sort of working our way through, like, how does everybody get paid? And will it get passed on to the buyer, or are realtors going to sort of absorb this into how they, market the properties online? So stay tuned for that. And it's just a good question to ask up front. Traditionally, the seller of the property paid a commission to the realtor, which was then split with the buyer's side. And that is still available as long as it's disclosed, but it may not be. So when you sit with a realtor, when you go to interview them and make sure that you're comfortable with them, that's a question you just have to ask, right? How do we get paid? How do I pay you, or how do you get paid? And make sure that it's, a comfortable thing for you to do. And that's it. You just got to know, to ask. That's all. right? So cash at closing. There's a couple of categories of closing costs that you need to be aware of. So your down payment is an obvious one. The value of the house minus your loan amount is your down payment, or vice versa. And those combined add up to the amount of money that the seller is going to receive from you. In addition to that, there are other items that need to be paid for you to take ownership of a property. So the deed has to be recorded. In most states and in general, it's best to hire an attorney to do a title search and make sure that the property is free and clear of any liens when it's sold to you. If there is an old debt that wasn't paid off, or a home equity line, like the bank forgets to write it off on the registry of deeds, that's a debt available on the house that doesn't belong to you. So that's all got to get taken care of. And those are all covered by your closing costs. So there'll be a title search. They will do a plot plan and make sure that there's nothing encroaching on it. They'll look back 100 years of ownership and any liens put on the property and make sure that those are all free and clear when you take ownership of it. So those are your raw closing costs. There's like a lender fee, there is the title service fees, the attorney's fees, and that adds up to, say, $3,000. And then you have your prepaids, which are distinctly not closing costs, but it's money that's due at the closing. So if today is the 17th of the month and you buy your house, you owe 12 or 15 days of interest starting today to the end of the month. You owe taxes starting today to the end of the month. The sellers owe their taxes up to today. So that all gets calculated and balanced at the closing. So the attorneys and the seller's attorneys will make sure that they've calculated out the exact tax bill that's due, and then you'll pay that at the closing. Your homeowner's insurance is paid annually, so you'll pay for a year of insurance at your closing. And then if you have an escrow account, once a month, you'll pay 1/12 of your insurance bill, and you'll pay 1/12 of your tax bill. And then if you're in New Hampshire, it's a semi-annual tax. Massachusetts is quarterly, but the lender will distribute your tax payments. And then 1 year from today, they would distribute your homeowner's insurance payment for the upcoming year. And easy kind of rule of thumb is about 1% of your purchase price is what you're going to have to bring to closing in addition to your down payment. So if it's an $800,000 house, you're probably looking at about $8,000 total between the interest from that mortgage, between the tax bill on the house, and those proportionately go up and down with your loan amount. Title insurance is directly tied to your loan amount, but everything else is either a fixed cost or taxes and expenses as part, unique to your property.
Okay.
Right. In my opinion, yes, I think having an attorney present on a purchase this large is a good move. Not every state requires it. Massachusetts does. To have a closing in the state of Massachusetts, there needs to be an attorney there. An attorney files the paperwork. They distribute all the money. So that's done in a standard in Massachusetts. But anywhere else, like an attorney can go to court, right? An attorney that's passed the bar in that state can enforce the purchase and sale agreement, or they can break the purchase and sale agreement in your favor if you need to. And you don't want to hire one after the fact, right? Once things go bad, your likelihood of success goes down a little bit. So you want to make sure that your deposit's defended the entire time. And on a purchase that large, $1,000 to have an attorney present is a pretty small fee, in my opinion, that is very much worth it.
Any financial professional is going to advise you to be prudent.
Yeah.
And this is prudence.
Agreed. All right. Inspections and repairs. So yeah, similarly, it's with the pandemic and the housing market and the craze that we were in, it's relaxed a little bit. But there was a time where the expectation was you would always waive home inspection. And I am unilaterally opposed to that because you've got to own this house. And unless you are personally like an expert contractor who can assess a home, you want somebody to do that, right? Cracks in the foundation, code, if a purchase gets through and you own it, you're now the owner. So if the house has an enormous problem, which could potentially be very obvious to somebody who works in that industry, but it wouldn't be to the average person walking by the house. So the suggestions we've made in the past are you can do like a guerrilla inspection. So bring the home inspector to a viewing of the house and, just ask them to look for any big ticket problems, right? They're not going to go in and inspect every single outlet in the house, but to replace an outlet is under $100. So we call that okay. Is the roof okay? Is the foundation okay? Is the structure of the house abnormal in any way? Is the deck about to fall off? And they can look for $50,000 and $20,000 and $10,000 problems, and that can help you whether you're going to decide to make an offer on that house or not. And that would be the only way I would encourage a client to potentially waive inspection, is if they've already had the inspector view the house and they feel good about, the big ticket items, the bones of the house, the roof of the house, and then, you could possibly waive the home inspection. But if it's a requirement, like it's in my mind already suspicious. Like if the house is in perfect order, what's the problem with the home inspection? So
makes sense.
yeah, so it's currently, for the last few years, it's always been the optimal time to sell a house, and it's not been the optimal time to buy one. So in Greater Boston and Massachusetts, it remains a bit of a seller's market. There's more houses on the market right now. There's more houses coming on than there have been, which is good for my buyers and anyone looking. But there is a cycle within real estate. So June is always the busiest month in real estate, and that's a lot of cases driven by the school year. So if you live in a town by the end of June, your kids are into the school system without any extra effort. And that tends to make June the busiest month. June 30th is always the busiest day in the Registry of Deeds every year for decades, and that's the driving factor there. But right now there's always a buyer, so there's never really a bad time to sell your house. Like if there's 10 feet of snow, I guess it's a little harder, but someone's going to buy it, and there might not be a line around the block, but there will still be a fair amount of traffic. So if you can strategically sell, it's probably good to sell in the spring. But if you need to sell today, like you put the house on the market and someone's going to come and see it.
Are we seeing a lot of, this doesn't necessarily play to your market because this is going to ask about cash buyers. You're seeing a lot of cash buyers still flooding the market. We were seeing that last year. So that's still happening?
Yeah, and we engage in it after the fact. So if parents are able to, pay for the house cash out of, their investments or their savings, and then we do a cash out refinance and put the debt on the house after you're an owner, you can close significantly quicker. And a seller is going to be, it's more appealing to a seller to know, listen, we're just going to write a check for this house. So if you're going to have to obtain financing, it's factually going to take a little bit longer. You're going to have an appraisal and do all the other things. So the agreement is basically we pre-approve a client for their mortgage, and that mortgage is just going to be put on the house after they buy it. And then, so cash purchases are quite common, actually. If you do a little research in the Registry of Deeds, you can see no mortgages recorded at the time of the purchase. And so that tells you that was a cash purchase. And they're quite common. And then we have that discussion a lot with, right, how do you structure it so that you can put the mortgage on it quickly? The parents can write a private mortgage for their kids, and then they can refinance that. So there's ways, again, to strategize and make it more efficient after the fact, as long as the team is involved before you actually go and make the purchase. Once it's in writing, there's some rules and stuff that are immovable if they haven't been planned for. So like, again, if that's your goal, you talk to your advisor, you get the team together and then agree on the plan, and then you can execute on the plan once you find the property.
Okay. Yeah, that's very, very interesting. So there's an awful lot of data out there that you can do a little research on, so we can definitely be more informed purchasers. Combine that with consulting professionals, and puts you in a much better position to make an intelligent decision. So thank you, Jeff. That was outstanding. We appreciate it. So again, just from Gold Coast Mortgage, you can see up on the slide there, there's both of our email addresses. Feel free to direct any questions toward them. But for right now, I've got a couple of questions that came up. Please feel free to enter any into the system right now, and we'll try to answer them for you without going too much further over time. So Jeff, back to the credit cards. One of our attendees asked, how do you add kids to your credit cards? Do the credit card companies even allow this? And does that mean your kids can use your cards? That's a fair question.
Very fair. So you log in, like if you have an app for your credit card, or you log into like Bank of America and you go to your credit card, it'll ask you, would you like to add an authorized user? And you just select yes. You have to enter their social security number and some basic information, and then they'll mail you the card, and you just don't give them the card. So like my 7-year-old isn't walking around with my credit card. It's just sitting in a safe spot in the house. But if his credit gets looked at, my credit card and the history of it, which is like 20 something years old, will be on his credit. So he isn't able to use it because I haven't given it to him. If someday, like he's going to college and he just needs the emergency credit card, I can give him that. It's got his name on it. He can use it. I will get the bill for it. So it's all my debt, but the payment will show on his credit, and so will the credit history. So unless you give them access to the card, they can't really do anything with it. They're not informed or anything like that. You don't get they can't log into my bank or into my credit card and look at it or make changes. They're just authorized to use the available debt on that card.
Gotcha. Another question we've got. This was just an observation. Waiving a home inspection is dangerous, believe me. Sounds like there's a story there somewhere. Certainly illustrates the point. We also just had a question asked about bridge loans. How do they work, and are they advisable?
Yeah, so they are harder and harder to find. So the bridge loan used to be, we own a house, we want a down payment for the next house. So it's a very short-term home equity loan is what a bridge loan was or is. And the problem with it is a short-term loan isn't very profitable. So what happens is a lot of fees get piled on up front, so that it's now worth it for the bank to do the paperwork and execute on the loan for you. And to the point that no one gets them anymore. So none of our lenders, as an independent broker, we work with like big wholesalers, and they don't engage in that because, again, it's a loan on the equity in your house now that you can go put down on the next house. Then you'll sell this house and pay your mortgage and the bridge loan off. And, in my mind, if the problem is having 2 mortgages at once, like a third mortgage doesn't solve that in most cases. So once you start accounting for how much the fees are going to be, if you have to pay 2 points up front on however much that loan amount is, that's just immediate profit for the bank doing it. And, it might just, in a lot of cases, it makes it not worth doing. So bridge loans are harder and harder to find. And just, if you do find one, like aggressively pay attention to the terms, because they're going to be, they'll add up pretty quickly.
And sounds like you could potentially be in danger of violating both Rule 28 and 32.
Pretty quickly, yeah.
Yep, those things add up. Our last question comes from Hillary. Hi, Hillary. Hillary's one of us. Does Gold Coast serve New Hampshire?
We do. So we are licensed in Massachusetts, Maine, and New Hampshire.
Outstanding. Okay. Well, thank you for a thorough job, Jeff. Really appreciate your presentation and your information. Again, folks, feel free to reach out and we'll direct you where you need to go.
Yep. And, if somebody's out of the state that's in my footprint, I do have industry peers that can do all 50 states. So if somebody's in need of a referral or just a question being answered, I'm honored to hear the question. And then if I can't engage, I can direct you to somebody who can take care of you. So there's no question too small to send my way.
Excellent. Well, thanks everyone for attending and for your attention, and we'll see you next time.
Ooh, 12:40 on the dot.
There we go. Take care. Bye-bye.
So I actually sent the